After her billionaire parents died in a car crash, the people who promised to take care of her took everything instead. Her aunt and uncle claimed even the villa she grew up in, saying it's theirs now. This is not just another story. This story will make you cry and cheers at the end. Make sure you watch to the end. The rain didn't stop that morning. It poured so hard that the black umbrellas outside the church looked like shadows fighting to stay alive. Beneath one of them stood Raina Carter, her face half hidden, eyes red, but not from the rain. The white roses on her father's coffin were already wilting, soaking up the storm like grief itself. People whispered instead of mourning. The same relatives who had sent her birthday cards now avoided her gaze. Her father's sister, Vivian, stood near the front in a pearl coat, pretending to cry, but her eyes, those sharp, judgmental eyes, kept darting toward Raina's mother, Lila, a woman with skin the color of roasted chestnut and a soul built from quiet strength. She shouldn't even be here, Vivian muttered to her husband, Charles, loud enough for Raina to hear. He ruined our name marrying her. Look around, half the town didn't even come. Lila said nothing. She gripped Raina's hand tighter, trembling but proud. Raina wanted to scream, "That's my father you're burying, not your shame." But she stayed silent, because that's what her mother had taught her. Survive first, speak later. The pastor finished his prayer, and as the coffin lowered, Raina's heart dropped with it. She didn't cry this time. She couldn't. Losing her father was already a wound she couldn't touch without bleeding again. After the service, the guests drifted toward their cars, leaving trails of fake condolences behind. Vivian approached, holding an umbrella over herself but not over Raina or Lila. Her perfume cut through the smell of wet soil. "Lila," Vivian said sweetly, though her tone was venom wrapped in honey. "Edward's gone now, and the estate's future needs proper management. We'll take care of everything for you." Lila frowned. "His will covers that." Vivian smiled thinly. "Oh, it does. That's why I brought this." She handed over a cream envelope sealed with the Carter family crest. Raina could see the ink already bleeding from the rain. Her mother opened it carefully, but when she read the first line, the color drained from her face. The letter stated that the Carter estate, house, and business holdings would fall under the guardianship of Vivian and Charles Carter, to be maintained in family trust until the rightful heir reaches maturity. But it was signed only 2 days before her father's death. "That's not possible," Lila said, her voice cracking. "Edward wouldn't." Vivian tilted her head, feigning sympathy. "He was under a lot of stress, Dee. He wanted to protect the family from confusion." Her gaze shifted to Raina, her meaning sharp as glass. Raina stepped forward, jaw clenched. "My father loved us. He would never let you take." Vivian cut her off. "Child, this isn't about love. It's about blood." Those words hit harder than the thunder that followed. Every whisper, every glance, every uncomfortable smile from her father's family over the years suddenly made sense. They never saw her as his daughter. Charles took the umbrella from Vivian and turned away. "You should start packing," he said coldly. "The lawyers will be in touch." Raina's stomach twisted. She could feel her mother trembling beside her. The world had collapsed in one morning, first her father, now their home. As the Carters' luxury cars rolled away, Raina stood in the rain beside her father's grave. The letter slipped from her mother's hand, soaking into the mud like it belonged there. "Mom," she whispered, "what are we going to do?" Lila stared at the ground, silent for a long time before finally saying, "We survive. Just like always." But the storm didn't end that night. Hours later, as they returned to the mansion to gather their things, the house lights were already off. Locks changed. Guards at the gate refused to let them in. Raina pressed her palm against the cold iron gate and whispered, "You can take the house, but not who I am." Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating her reflection in a puddle. Her mother's eyes, her father's jawline, both halves of a world that had rejected her. Behind her, a man in a black suit stepped out of a parked car, watching. He wasn't from the funeral. He waited until Lila turned to comfort her daughter, then quietly dropped a soaked envelope at Raina's feet before vanishing back into the storm. Raina bent down, her heart pounding, and picked it up. The ink inside was smeared, but one line was still readable. "If something happens to me, trust no one, not even family." Her breath caught. The handwriting was her father's. And that's when she knew her father's death wasn't an accident. The following morning, sunlight spilled through the thin curtains of a motel room that smelled like bleach and old secrets. Raina hadn't slept. She sat on the edge of the bed, her father's damp letter clutched in her hand. Each word burned into her mind like a warning she couldn't escape. Her mother, Lila, moved quietly, folding their last few clothes into a small duffel bag. "We can't stay here long," she said softly. "They'll find a way to push us even lower if we let them." Raina looked up, her voice brittle. "Mom, what if they killed him?" Lila froze. Her hands trembled as she zipped the bag. "Don't say that," she whispered, her eyes glistening. "We can't fight people like them. Not yet." The word "yet" stayed in Raina's mind. It sounded like a promise, or a warning. Outside, the world went on as if nothing had changed. Cars honked, people laughed at the diner next door, and the morning radio played a cheerful song that felt cruel. But Raina couldn't stop staring at the letter. Trust no one. Not even family. A knock rattled the door. Lila's shoulders tensed. "Stay back," she whispered, grabbing her purse. She peeked through the peephole. It was Mr. Dawson, the Carter's lawyer. The same man who had read her father's will just the day before. Lila opened the door only a few inches. "What do you want?" He smiled faintly, stepping into the light. "Just business, Mrs. Carter. I came to collect your house keys. The family asked me to ensure everything is settled." Lila's lips tightened. "We don't have the keys anymore." "Then this is for you," he said, handing her another envelope. "Official notice. You're expected to vacate the property by noon today. If you return, you'll be trespassing." Raina's voice shook. "My father built that house. He died in it." Mr. Dawson didn't look at her. "It's not your home anymore, Miss Carter." The door slammed before he could say more. Lila locked it, then pressed her forehead against the wood, whispering a prayer under her breath. That afternoon, they drove back to the mansion one last time. The massive iron gates that once swung open for them now stood locked, guarded by men in suits who refused to meet Raina's eyes. Their family crest, an engraved silver C, gleamed in the sunlight like a wound. Raina clenched her fists. "They can have the house," she said through gritted teeth, "but they can't erase us." Lila didn't answer. She just placed her hand on Raina's shoulder and whispered, "Come on, baby. Let's go home." But home was now a single motel room. And when the night came, the storm returned, loud and restless. Raina couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, staring at the distant lights of the mansion on the hill. A flash of lightning revealed something strange. A car parked across the street, engine idling. The driver's face was hidden, but she could feel their eyes on her. Her heart pounded. "Mom," she whispered, shaking Lila awake. "Someone's out there." Lila got up, peeking through the curtain. The car headlights flickered once, then went dark. "It's nothing," she said, though her voice trembled. "Just someone lost." But when Raina looked again, the car was gone, and in its place, taped to their motel door, was a white envelope. She ran out into the rain, tearing it open under the flickering light. Inside was a photograph, her father at his office desk. Behind him stood her uncle, Charles, hand on his shoulder, smiling. But scrawled across the photo in red ink were the words, "Some accidents are designed." Raina's blood ran cold. She looked up at the stormy sky and whispered, "You wanted me to trust no one, Daddy. I won't." The thunder roared back, almost like an answer. The motel hallway smelled like burnt coffee and fear. Raina didn't tell her mother about the message written across the photo. She couldn't. Not yet. Lila was already fragile, her hands shaking every time someone walked past their door. Raina sat alone at the small table, staring at the photograph under the dim yellow lamp. The red ink looked fresh, like it was meant to bleed. Every time she blinked, her father's tired eyes seemed to beg her to uncover the truth. That morning, Lila tried to sound hopeful. "We'll start fresh, baby. Maybe Atlanta. I can find work. You'll finish school." Raina nodded, but her voice was hollow. "Yeah, a new start." But inside, she was burning. Later that day, she returned to the mansion's gate alone. The guards recognized her instantly and stepped forward. "You can't be here," one of them said. "I just need 5 minutes," she pleaded. "There's something inside that belongs to me. My father's letter, he left, orders are orders. You step 1 foot past that gate, we call the sheriff." She clenched her jaw. "Go ahead. Maybe I'll tell him what really happened to my dad." That made them pause. For a brief second, one guard looked nervous. His eyes darted toward the security camera, then back to her. "Walk away, Miss Carter," he muttered, "before you get yourself hurt." Her chest tightened. "Hurt?" she repeated, but he said nothing more. That night, she told her mother everything, about the photograph, the red words, and what the guard said. Lila's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed steady. "You listen to me, Raina. These people don't play fair. We can't go near them again." "But Mom," Raina whispered, "what if they killed him?" Lila turned away, hands over her mouth, fighting the truth that she tried to bury since the funeral. "Then we'll let God handle them," she said softly. "Because if we try, they'll destroy us, too." The words broke Raina's heart more than they comforted her. Days turned into weeks. Money ran out. Raina got a part-time job at a diner down the street, wiping tables and pretending she didn't hear customers whisper about that Carter girl who lost everything. One evening, as she walked home after closing, a black car slowed beside her. The window rolled down. Mr. Dawson again. He didn't smile this time. "You're making people nervous, Raina," he said. "You're asking questions that don't need answers." She stepped back. "Did you write this?" she asked, holding up the photo she'd carried in her coat pocket. He sighed. "Burn that. And stop digging. You don't understand the kind of men your father was involved with." "My father was a good man," she snapped. "He didn't deserve what happened." Dawson's eyes softened just for a second. "No, he didn't," he said quietly. "But you still have time to save yourself. Leave town." The car drove away, its taillights disappearing into the fog. Raina stood there, shaking, the streetlight flickering above her. She didn't know whether Dawson's words were a warning or a confession. When she got back to the motel, the room door was wide open. "Mom," she called out, rushing inside. The lights were still on, but the bed was empty. Their few belongings were scattered across the floor. On the table sat a single envelope, her name written in shaky handwriting. She tore it open. Inside was a short note. "Don't come looking for me. They know. Be safe." "Mom." Raina froze, the letter trembling in her hand. She looked out the window. An unfamiliar car idled in the distance, headlights off. Her chest tightened. The storm was back. But this time, it wasn't outside. It was inside her. She whispered to herself, if they took her, they took the wrong girl. If you're loving this story so far, don't forget to smash that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. The police didn't take her seriously. They never do when poor girls start screaming about rich families. Raina sat on the metal chair in the small-town precinct, the fluorescent lights buzzing above her. The officer across the desk yawned, scribbling notes that looked more like doodles. "So you're saying," he said slowly, "your mother vanished from your motel room without a struggle?" Raina gripped the edge of the chair. Her things were scattered. The door was open. She wouldn't just leave me. He raised a brow. Maybe she needed a break. People run off all the time. Her chest tightened. "You don't understand," she left a note. It wasn't her handwriting. He leaned back, folding his arms. "Miss Carter, you've had a rough few weeks. Maybe get some rest." Raina slammed her hand on the desk. My father's death wasn't an accident, and now my mother's missing. Doesn't that mean anything to you? The officer sighed, standing up. There's nothing we can do unless we find proof of foul play. She wanted to scream, but her throat locked. As she walked out, she could feel the pitying eyes of the front desk clerk following her. Like everyone already wrote her off as unstable. That night, she returned to the motel room alone. Every sound made her jump. The hum of the fridge, the creak of the ceiling fan. She sat on the floor clutching her mother's letter, whispering prayers that faded into sobs. By midnight, she couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her coat and stepped outside into the cold. The street was quiet, except for the buzz of a distant power line. A few blocks away, smoke curled into the air. Faint, but growing. Her stomach dropped. She ran. The smell hit her before she saw it. The motel engulfed in orange light, flames eating through the walls like angry hands. People shouted, sirens wailed, but Raina froze. That was their room. Her life, her mother's things, her father's letter, all burning. Someone's still in there, a man shouted. Raina's heart stopped. Mom. She pushed past the crowd, ignoring the heat against her face. Someone tried to stop her, but she tore free and ran into the fire. The smoke clawed at her throat, her lungs screaming for air. She stumbled through the burning hallway, coughing, calling out, Mom! Mom! The bed was empty. The window was open. But something glinted in the corner, her father's bracelet, the one her mother wore after his death. She grabbed it, coughing hard as flames cracked the ceiling. A firefighter pulled her out seconds before the roof caved in. Outside, she collapsed on the grass, gasping, the bracelet still clenched in her hand. Was anyone inside? The paramedic asked. Raina shook her head weakly. She's gone. They took her. Later, as the fire trucks cleared, she sat wrapped in a blanket, watching the last embers fade. The paramedics wanted her to go to the hospital, but she refused. She had nowhere left to go. A police officer handed her a plastic bag containing what was left of her belongings, ashes and a melted phone. But inside the bag was something new, something that hadn't been there before. A small black USB drive. Her pulse raced. She didn't own a USB. Etched on the side were 2 words written in neat, block letters, for Raina. She looked around the parking lot, scanning every face. No one met her eyes. She whispered into the night. What is this? Who are you? The USB felt warm in her palm, like it had been passed just seconds before she found it. And in that moment, Raina knew 2 things. Her mother hadn't left by choice. And whoever took her wanted Raina to find the truth, no matter how dangerous it would become. The fire behind her hissed, fading into smoke, but inside her, a new fire had just begun. She clenched the bracelet in one hand and the USB in the other. You tried to erase us, she murmured, eyes glinting in the firelight. Now I'll erase you. The motel fire had taken everything except the bracelet on her wrist and that tiny black USB drive. By morning, Raina sat in the public library, her reflection ghosted across the computer screen. Her hands trembled as she slid the USB into the port. For a long second, nothing happened, then a folder appeared. It was labeled Truth. Her heart pounded as she clicked it open. Dozens of files filled the screen, photos, documents, audio recordings. The first file was a video. She pressed play. A shaky camera revealed a man in his 50s sitting in an office chair, Marcus Dean, her father's old business partner. His voice was quiet, nervous. If you're watching this, it means Edward is gone. And if Edward's gone, it wasn't an accident. Vivian and Charles, they did this. They wanted the company. They wanted the land. And they weren't going to wait. Raina covered her mouth. Marcus looked directly at the camera. I tried to warn him, but they were already planning the takeover. There's one more thing, something Edward kept hidden. Something that could destroy them all. It's not in the office. It's in the house. The screen went black. Her pulse raced. The house. The same house she'd been locked out of. The same house her father had built for them. She scrolled through the documents. Financial records, forged signatures, property transfers, all showing millions quietly moved from her father's accounts into a Carter Holdings subsidiary owned by Vivian. She whispered, "You killed him for money." But one file stood out. It was a photo of her mother, taken days before her father's death, smiling in front of a company car. In the corner of the image, half hidden, was a reflection of Vivian in the rearview mirror, watching her. Raina's stomach turned. None of this was random. They had been planning to erase her family long before the crash. She downloaded everything onto a flash drive from the library's front desk. As she walked out, her mind was already spinning. How to get into that house again. How to find what Marcus mentioned. The sky was gray, wind carrying the smell of smoke and rain. She stopped at a diner for coffee, sitting near the window, planning. Then she noticed a man at the counter watching her. He wasn't eating, just stirring his drink slowly, eyes fixed on her. Her heartbeat quickened. When she stood to leave, he did too. She walked faster, cutting through the alley behind the diner. His footsteps echoed behind her. "Raina." She froze. No one had called her name in weeks. She turned. The man stepped out of the shadows. Tall, dark jacket, familiar eyes. "Marcus," she whispered. He nodded, his face pale. "You shouldn't have watched that video here. They're tracking everything." Her throat tightened. "You're alive. They said you died." "I had to disappear," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "They're watching the estate. They know you've got the files now." She stepped closer, tears stinging her eyes. "Where's my mother? Do you know where she is?" Marcus hesitated. "I can't tell you here. But listen, your father left a backup, something stronger than what's on that drive. It's hidden in the house. The study. Behind the painting of the lake. That's where the real proof is." Raina's mind raced. "Then we go get it." He shook his head. "Not tonight. Wait for my call. I'll." A car screeched at the end of the alley. Headlights flashed. Marcus pushed her back. "Go!" he shouted. Gunfire split the air. Raina ducked behind a dumpster as Marcus fell, clutching his chest. She screamed his name, but he only managed one last word before his voice faded into the night. "Trust no one." The car sped away. Raina crawled toward him, shaking, blood on her hands. "Marcus! Marcus, stay with me." But his eyes were already gone. Sirens wailed in the distance. She stumbled out of the alley, clutching the flash drive against her chest, her mind spinning. Marcus had died protecting the truth, just like her father. And now, every part of her screamed one thought louder than fear itself. She had to get inside that house. Raina didn't go back to the motel or the police station. She walked through the night like a ghost, Marcus's blood drying on her sleeves, her pulse echoing in her ears. When she finally reached the bus station, she bought a ticket to nowhere, just somewhere that wasn't here. She sat in the back, staring out the window as the city lights blurred past. By morning, she was miles away, in a small town where nobody knew her name. She rented a room above a laundromat using cash she'd found in Marcus's jacket. The flash drive stayed in her pocket like a heartbeat. She plugged it into the small laptop she'd borrowed from the manager's son. The last file she hadn't opened was audio only. The title, Lila_recording 1. Her hand trembled as she clicked play. Her mother's voice filled the room. "Marcus, if anything happens, tell Raina the truth. Tell her her father didn't die in that crash. He was forced off the road. They wanted him gone before he could transfer the company shares to her name. And they told me, if I didn't stay quiet, they'd take her too." Raina froze. She could hear fear in her mother's voice, the kind of fear that leaves fingerprints on your soul. "I'm leaving this message because I don't trust the police, and I don't trust his family. Marcus, if you find this before they find me, keep her safe." The recording ended with a sound, like a door opening, and then silence. Raina stared at the screen, numb. Her mother had known. She hadn't left by choice. Her father's words echoed in her mind. Trust no one, not even family. She replayed the audio again and again, memorizing every word, every pause, every breath. By the fifth replay, her tears had dried into something colder: resolve. She opened the map app on her phone and zoomed in on the Carter estate. The mansion sat on the edge of town, surrounded by forest and private roads. Security cameras lined the gates, but Marcus had given her the key, behind the painting of the lake. Her father had painted that himself. No one but him and her mother ever knew its secret. That night, she packed her things. Black jeans, hoodie, gloves. Nothing fancy, just quiet. As the sky turned violet, she reached the hill overlooking the mansion. From up there, it looked almost peaceful. Too peaceful. She waited until the guards switched shifts. Then she slipped through the trees, cutting along the back fence. Her breath clouded in the cold air. She climbed over the gate, landing softly on wet grass. Her heart thudded in her ears. The house loomed ahead, massive, silent, familiar. Every brick carried a memory she wasn't ready to face. Raina crept around to the study window. Locked. She pulled a small screwdriver from her pocket. Marcus had left it for her, taped inside his jacket. Within seconds, the latch clicked open. She slid inside. Dust hung in the air like ghosts of her childhood. The old leather couch, the wooden desk, the smell of cigar smoke, everything looked the same. Only colder. Her flashlight beam swept across the wall until it landed on the painting of the lake. She approached it slowly, hand trembling as she lifted it off the hook. Behind it, a small metal panel. Just like Marcus said. She unscrewed the bolts. Her pulse quickened. Inside the hidden compartment was a folder thick with papers and a small digital recorder. She pressed play. A man's voice. Her father's. If you're hearing this, it means I failed to protect you. Vivian and Charles are planning something bigger than anyone knows. Something that goes beyond money. There's someone funding them. Someone dangerous. The recording cut off abruptly, replaced by static. She stared at the recorder, her chest tightening. Someone funding them, she whispered. Who? Then she heard it. Footsteps in the hallway. Slow. Heavy. Getting closer. She turned off her flashlight, her breath catching. The handle on the study door turned. Raina crouched behind the desk, clutching the recorder to her chest. The door creaked open. A beam of light swept across the room. Thought you'd come back, a deep voice said. It wasn't her uncle. It was one of the guards. He stepped inside, flashlight in one hand, gun in the other. Raina's pulse pounded. One wrong breath, and she was caught. Then, from behind him, another voice whispered sharply, "Don't shoot. We need her alive." The guard froze. And in that instant, Raina realized, whoever was funding her uncle's plans was already here. If you're still enjoying this story, share this video with someone that needs to watch this video. The sound of boots against marble echoed through the hall like gunfire in a church. Raina crouched lower behind the desk, her breath shallow. The two men stood in the doorway, the guard she'd seen before and a taller figure wearing a long coat, his voice calm but commanding. "Check the windows," the man said. She couldn't have gotten far. Raina's fingers brushed against a drawer handle. She pulled it open quietly, empty. Another one, locked. She reached into her pocket for the screwdriver Marcus had left her, praying it wouldn't clatter against the wood. Click. Inside the drawer, she found a single key and a folded photograph. The picture showed her father standing beside a man she didn't recognize. A man with silver hair and eyes cold as winter. Written on the back were 3 words, "Trust only Dean." Before she could process it, the flashlight beam swept across the desk. "There," the guard shouted. Raina bolted from her hiding spot, the key clenched in her hand. The taller man lunged, but she ducked under his arm, sprinting down the hallway. The echo of footsteps followed. She turned a corner and saw the back door, the same one her mother used to step through with groceries when the staff wasn't home. She shoved it open and ran into the rain, mud splashing under her shoes. A shout behind her, "Stop her!" She didn't. Her lungs burned, but she didn't stop until she reached the edge of the woods. Lightning flashed, showing the mansion shrinking behind her, and for a second she swore she saw someone watching from the second-floor window, Vivian. By the time she made it back to the road, her legs were shaking. A car sped by, its headlights cutting through the storm, and Raina stuck out her hand. It skidded to a stop, a truck. The driver, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes, leaned out. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Raina hesitated. "Something like that." "Hop in, sweetheart." Raina climbed in, shivering. The woman introduced herself as Celia Monroe, a retired nurse on her way to Atlanta. Raina gave a fake name, Ray. Celia drove in silence for a while before glancing over. "You running from somebody?" Raina stared out the window. "I'm running towards something." Celia smiled softly. "That's better." When they reached a diner off the highway, Celia insisted she eat something. Raina nodded, forcing down coffee while her hands still shook. Her mind replayed the moment in the study. The voice saying, "We need her alive." Whoever that man was, he wasn't just hired muscle. He knew more. Maybe he was the one Marcus warned her about, the one funding everything. As she stirred her coffee, something caught her eye, the local newspaper on the counter. The headline made her blood run cold. "Businessman Marcus Dean found dead. Police suspect suicide." Suicide. That was the story they were spinning. Her jaw tightened. They wanted his name buried with his body. She looked closer. The article mentioned his business partner, Edward Blake Carter. Her father. It also mentioned a third name she didn't recognize, Lawrence Voss, an investor rumored to be involved in the company's expansion before the crash. The same man in the photo from her father's drawer. The man with the silver hair. The diner door jingled as someone walked in. Raina froze. The man wore a gray coat, his hair slicked back, the same eyes from the photograph. He ordered coffee, turned, and scanned the room. His gaze brushed past her, then stopped. Raina's heart jumped. He smiled, slow, knowing, and raised his cup slightly, as if in a toast. Celia noticed her pale face. "Honey, you okay?" Raina forced a smile. "Yeah. Just remembering something." The man left his coffee untouched and slipped a small envelope onto the counter as he walked out. Raina waited until he was gone before she grabbed it. Inside was a single note, written in elegant cursive. "You have something that belongs to me. Stop looking, or you'll end up like Dean." Her stomach dropped. She turned the note over. There was an address scrawled at the bottom, an abandoned property outside the city. She folded it slowly, her pulse steadying. They wanted her to stop. Instead, she was going to knock on their door. Because if Lawrence Voss was the man behind her father's death, he was about to learn what happens when you try to bury the wrong woman. The road to the old property stretched through miles of pine and silence. No lights, no signs, just fog hanging over cracked asphalt like ghosts guarding a secret. Raina tightened her grip on the steering wheel of Celia's borrowed car, her heartbeat matching the rhythm of the wipers. The address Lawrence Voss had written led to a forgotten part of town, an industrial wasteland of rusted warehouses and overgrown weeds. When she reached the end of the road, the GPS froze. Ahead stood a massive metal gate chained shut, with a faded sign that read Carter Holdings, Storage Facility Number 12. Her chest tightened. Her father's name. His company. But he'd never mentioned this place. She cut the engine and stepped into the cold air. The silence was thick, heavy, as if the world itself was holding its breath. She pulled the bolt cutters from the trunk. Marcus had left them wrapped in his jacket, and snapped the chain. The gate creaked open. Inside, the warehouse smelled of oil and mold. Shafts of moonlight spilled through broken windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like ghosts. Raina moved carefully, her flashlight cutting through the dark. Stacks of old boxes lined the walls, each stamped with the company logo. She opened one, blueprints. Another, financial ledgers. Then, a file marked Project Unity. Her father's handwriting. Heart pounding, she opened it. Inside were pages of notes, contracts, and letters exchanged between her father and Lawrence Voss. They were planning a massive development, a new community center built on the city's south side. But the last page made her hands shake. Vivian disagrees with including low-income housing. Says it lowers the brand image. Edward insists it's non-negotiable. Below it, scribbled in red ink, resolve this problem. Permanently. Raina's stomach dropped. The crash hadn't just been about greed. It was about race. Her father's final act of kindness, wanting to give back, had threatened the family's image. And they killed him for it. A sound behind her broke the silence. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. She turned off her flashlight, crouching behind the boxes. A door creaked open. 2 men entered, their flashlights slicing through the dark. She recognized one, Voss's driver from the diner. Boss said she might come here, the man muttered. If she finds that folder. Then she disappears, too, the other replied. Raina's pulse raced. She looked around desperately. Near the far wall, a vent cover hung loose. She crawled toward it, silent, the file clutched to her chest. One of the flashlights swung dangerously close, brushing over her shoulder. Check over there, one said. She slipped inside the vent just as the beam hit the spot where she'd been. Dust filled her throat as she crawled through the narrow tunnel. The sound of boots followed, echoing behind her. Did you hear that? She moved faster. The tunnel ended in a grated opening. She kicked it loose, tumbling out into the cold night. Her knees scraped against the gravel, but she didn't stop. She ran back to the car, lungs burning, hands shaking as she shoved the file onto the passenger seat. A flash of headlights behind her. They'd seen her. She floored the gas pedal, tires screaming against the dirt. The road curved sharply, and for a second she thought she'd lost them, until the headlights reappeared in the mirror, closer this time. She swerved through the fog, heart slamming against her ribs. The other car rammed her bumper once, twice. She screamed, gripping the wheel. Then, from the darkness ahead, another pair of lights appeared, coming straight toward her. Move, she shouted to herself, jerking the wheel. The car skidded off the road, crashing into a ditch. Airbags exploded, white smoke filling the cabin. Raina coughed, dazed, blood trickling from her lip. The headlights behind her stopped. 2 shadows stepped out, walking toward her slowly. She reached for the glove compartment, empty. Her vision blurred, but she saw something glint on the ground. Her father's bracelet, fallen from her wrist in the chaos. The men reached the car door. Get her out, one said. Before they could pull it open, another engine roared to life nearby. A truck barreled down the road, its lights blinding. The men turned too late. The truck slammed into them, sending them flying into the ditch. Raina shielded her face as glass shattered. When the dust settled, she looked up, and there, stepping out of the truck, was Celia Monroe. The same calm eyes, the same steady hands. Didn't I tell you, sweetheart? She said, helping Raina out of the wreck. Some things are worth running toward. Raina stared at her, shaking. How did you? Marcus told me where you'd go if things went bad, Celia said. He planned further than you think. Raina clutched the Project Unity file to her chest. They killed him. And my dad. Celia nodded slowly. Then we make sure they never hurt anyone again. The warehouse behind them caught fire, flames licking the sky, turning the fog orange. Raina didn't look back. She slid into the passenger seat as Celia drove off into the night. This time, she wasn't running away. She was preparing for war. If you're loving this story so far, smash that like button and let us know with a fire emoji in the comments. The night swallowed the road as Celia's truck sped toward Atlanta. The glow from the burning warehouse faded behind them until it was just another scar on the horizon. Raina clutched the Project Unity file in her lap, her mind racing faster than the tires beneath her. She flipped through the papers, the pages rattling with every bump. Financial statements, architectural drawings, and letters signed by her father. His careful, looping handwriting made her chest ache. But then she noticed something strange, a list of project stakeholders. The last name on the list stopped her cold. Raina Carter. Her mother's name. Raina's voice shook. She was part of this. Celia glanced over, eyes narrowing. What do you mean? Raina held up the document. My mother wasn't just the wife of the founder. She was on the board for Project Unity. She had her own shares. They didn't just steal from my father, they erased her completely. Celia tightened her grip on the wheel. And if she was on the board, she knew things they couldn't let reach the press. Raina's throat went dry. That's why they took her. Celia said nothing. The only sound was the wind cutting through the cracks in the windows and the distant hum of a truck passing in the opposite lane. By morning, they reached the edge of the city. Celia parked behind a rundown cafe where she used to work. She pulled a folded notepad from her bag and slid it across the table. You said there was a name, Lawrence Voss. I've seen it before. Raina frowned. Way. In the papers, years ago, Celia said. Big developer. Quiet donor to politicians. Everyone said he helped clean up the Carter family's debt after your father's crash. But I think he caused it. Raina's pulse quickened. Then here's the key. We find him, we find the truth. Celia nodded, sliding her phone across the table. You're not the only one who knows how to dig. I ran his name through a few channels. He owns several shell companies. One of them manages an estate just outside the city limits. Raina looked at the screen. A property photo appeared. A gated villa surrounded by trees. The caption read, Voss Foundation, Private Rehabilitation Center. Rehabilitation, she repeated. What kind of rehab? Officially. Celia said. Luxury retreat for executives. Unofficially, a place where people disappear until they remember their story the way Voss wants them to. Raina's stomach twisted. You think my mom's there? Celia leaned forward. If she's alive, that's the kind of place they'd keep her. Isolated, quiet, under the name of some fake patient. Raina pressed a hand to her chest, the thought both terrifying and electric. Then I'm going in. Celia frowned. You can't just walk in the front door, honey. They'll recognize you. Raina flipped to the last page of the Project Unity folder. Her mother's photo was stapled there, smiling, proud, next to a short biography that listed her as community director. Underneath, another line in red pen, transfer her quietly before media learns of her involvement. Her breath caught. They already moved her once. Celia reached across the table, gripping her hand. If you go in there, you might not come out. Raina looked her dead in the eyes. Neither did she. That night, Raina and Celia parked a mile away from the Voss Foundation gates. Through binoculars, Raina watched guards patrol the driveway. The building itself looked peaceful, white walls, manicured gardens, a small lake reflecting the moonlight. She put on the baseball cap and nurse's scrubs Celia had brought her. You sure this will work? Celia smirked. Trust me, nobody questions a tired nurse carrying a clipboard. Raina took a deep breath. If I'm not out by sunrise. Celia cut her off. Don't say that. Just get what you need and call me. Raina nodded, stepping out of the truck. The gravel crunched softly under her shoes as she walked toward the gate. Her forged ID hung from her chest, her heart pounding so loud she could hear it in her ears. When she reached the front desk, a young security officer looked up. You knew? Yeah, she said, keeping her tone light. Night shift. They called me in from Atlanta General. He barely looked at her badge. Long night ahead. Room checks at midnight. Don't wonder. She forced a smile. Wouldn't dream of it. Once inside, Raina moved down the quiet hallway, the smell of antiseptic stinging her nose. She passed rooms labeled with patient numbers, soft music echoing from speakers above. Her hand trembled as she opened one door, and froze. Inside, a woman sat by the window, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes distant. Mom! Raina whispered. The woman turned slowly. Her face was thinner, older, but unmistakable. Raina, she murmured, voice trembling. Tears blurred Raina's vision. She rushed forward, kneeling beside her. It's me, "Mom, I found you." But before Lila could speak again, the lights flickered, then went out completely. A voice came over the intercom. "Unauthorized entry detected. All staff to East Wing." Raina's blood ran cold. The guards were coming. She grabbed her mother's hand, whispering, "We're getting out of here." Lila's eyes filled with tears. "You shouldn't have come." From the hallway, footsteps thundered closer. And then, click. The door locked from the outside. The fluorescent lights blinked back to life, flooding the room in a harsh white glare. Raina's pulse hammered in her ears. The sound of boots thundered closer down the hall, and the metallic click of the lock made her skin crawl. "Mom, listen to me," she whispered, gripping Lila's trembling hands. "We're getting out of here." Lila's eyes darted toward the door, fear etched deep into every wrinkle. "They said they'd kill you if I ever tried to leave," she whispered. "Raina, they're watching everything. Then they'll have to watch me take you back." Raina scanned the room. A single barred window, a metal bed, a vent above the sink. She dragged the chair under it, climbed up, and yanked at the cover. It didn't move. Damn it. Her mother reached into her hospital gown pocket and pulled out something small, a bobby pin. "Old habits," she said weakly, handing it over. Raina smiled through her tears. "You still got it." She bent the pin, slid it into the latch, twisting until she heard a click. The vent cover fell loose, clattering softly against the floor. From the hallway, a voice barked, "Room 17, lock it down." Raina froze. Her hands were slick with sweat. "Mom, climb up first." Lila hesitated, shaking her head. "No, you go. You're faster." "Mom." "Raina, go." She obeyed. Crawling into the narrow vent, she reached down to pull her mother up. But before she could, the door burst open. 2 men in black uniforms stormed in. "Get away from her," one shouted. Raina screamed, "Mom," but Lila shoved her further into the vent, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Don't stop," she yelled. "Find the truth." Then, bang. A gunshot. The sound echoed through the metal tunnel, ripping through Raina's chest like fire. She screamed, clawing at the vent, trying to crawl back, but the men were shouting now, boots pounding, chaos everywhere. She kept crawling until her arms gave out. Her face pressed against the cold metal, sobs shaking her whole body. The words "find the truth" repeated in her head until they blurred into a promise. When she finally reached the vent's end, she dropped into an empty maintenance hallway. Sirens blared through the building. She ran, her lungs burning, tears streaking down her face. At the emergency exit, she slammed the door open and stumbled into the night. The air was thick with rain again, the same storm that had followed her since the funeral. Celia's truck was parked behind a row of trees. She was already standing outside, waiting. When she saw Raina's face, she didn't ask questions. She just opened the passenger door. They drove in silence. The rain beat against the windshield, lightning slicing through the sky. Finally, Raina whispered, "They shot her." Celia's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Are you sure?" Raina shook her head, voice breaking. "I don't know. I just know I heard it." Celia slowed the truck, pulling over beneath an overpass. "Raina, you can't go back there. They'll kill you too." Raina turned to her, eyes hollow. "Then help me make sure they don't get the chance." She pulled the Project Unity file from her bag and spread it across the dashboard. "Lawrence Voss runs this. But he's not alone. There are others funding it, banks, politicians, people who used my father's death to build their own power. I'm going to take every one of them down." Celia's eyes softened. "You sound just like your daddy." "I'm going to finish what he started." Celia nodded slowly. "Then you'll need more than rage. You'll need proof." Raina reached into her pocket and pulled out the small recorder she'd found behind her father's painting. "I have it. My father's voice. The files. The evidence." Celia met her gaze. "Then it's time to tell the world." They drove through the night, heading toward a friend of Celia's, a journalist known for exposing corruption. Raina sat in silence, clutching the recorder like a lifeline. When they reached the city outskirts, Celia parked behind an old radio station. The sign read WRCN, Truth Radio. Inside, an older black man with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes greeted them. "Celia, you said this was urgent." "This is Raina Carter," Celia said, "and she's got a story the world needs to hear." He raised an eyebrow. "Carter? As in Edward Carter?" Raina nodded. "His daughter. The one they said didn't belong." The journalist studied her for a long moment, then gestured to a seat. "Tell me everything." For the next hour, she poured it all out. The crash, the stolen estate, the letter, the files, her mother, Marcus, Voss. By the time she finished, his eyes were wide, his recorder still running. "This," he murmured, "this could bring them all down." Raina leaned forward, voice steady. "Then let's do it." He nodded. "We'll air it tomorrow morning. But you should know, once this goes out, there's no going back." Raina met his gaze. "I don't want to go back." As they stepped outside, dawn began to break, a pale light cutting through the storm clouds. For the first time in years, Raina felt something she hadn't felt since her father's death. Hope. But as she looked across the street, her breath caught. A black car was parked there. The driver's window rolled down. Inside, Lawrence Voss smiled at her. He raised his phone, mouthed something she couldn't hear, then drove away. Celia touched her shoulder. "What did he say?" Raina swallowed hard, voice barely a whisper. "He said, round 2. Subscribe for part 2.